Ever since I was little, I was taught to think before speaking, to consider my words wisely. And oh man, did I take that crap to heart. I was the kid in the back of the class that never said anything. I even went as far as developing a pattern of pausing while I speak to be sure my words were right when they showed up. Now, this type of advice goes terribly on both sides. Some of you likely grew up like me, counseled on the wisdom of deliberate speech. And some of you may have not, and gone full radical honesty in the past, inadvertently causing drama and conflict along the way. So today, on Everyday Awareness, let's unpack this particular stimulus response dynamic. We'll look at why it happens, some of our most common responses, and how focusing in on the gap can help us communicate more clearly, consciously, and effectively. What just happened in your brain? Did you check your pockets? How about now? Maybe your mouth watered just a little? And how much more adrenaline do you feel when that sound happens? What we all just experienced is something called the stimulus response theory. In short, we humans were conditionable creatures. Ever since the dawn of humanity, we've developed responses to what's happening around us in order to be safe, secure, and keep surviving. And while this was a great help while we were running away from the dinosaurs, humanity's kept this pattern running into the modern era. You see, you experience a stimulus, whether that's thoughts, speech, actions, noises, memes, Elon's tweets, or that really ill-timed Slack message. And without thinking, you unconsciously react. You do the thing you've always done. The most well-known example of this conditioning was tested by Pavlov, where he trained a dog to eat when a bell rang. After enough time, the dog salivated just at the sound of the bell, without any food in sight. And we do the same thing. Do you still want that ice-cold Coca-Cola? So let's unpack this a bit. How much time have you spent looking at those reactions? Do you have any long-standing patterns or other typical responses? For most of us, there's a few old standbys. We either bear down and fight through, turn tail and run away, or just sit there and overwhelm. It's the old fight, flight, or freeze response. We could often even hop down below the line and find ourselves on the drama triangle, filling the roles of villain, victim, or hero. Or, for some of us, we stay above. We tend, we befriend, we lean in. Wherever you fall, one of these reactions likely drives your immediate response when you experience a stimulus. And once we're aware, the question becomes, what do we do to change that response? How do we move from unconscious conditioning to conscious control? How do we react with awareness? The trick? We gotta watch the gap. I had a grad school professor pull me aside one day and share an incredible piece of feedback. He said, "You are almost like a statue. I watch you take in information and just hold it there. Your expression doesn't change, and there's this long, frustrating pause before you say anything. I honestly don't know what you're thinking half the time, and it's driving me crazy." See, he was the first person to teach me about the gap that can exist between stimulus and response. That it can be manipulated if we practice, getting larger and smaller, faster and slower. And that leaning into our awareness of this gap can expose the choices we have in our response. They move from unconscious reactions to conscious choices. It changed the way I think about my brain forever. So, thank you, Wayne. For me, when I experience that stimulus, particularly ones that I perceive as threatening, like when I get an angry text message or bad news over email, my natural unconscious reaction is to withdraw, fading into the distance so nobody can affect me. A perfect example of this happened just last month when I had a client ask if I could reduce my rate because of budget cuts. My first reaction was, hell no. You don't want to pay me? I'm out. I fled. And then my brain flipped from flight mode into fight mode, and I got angry. They became the villain, I was the victim. It just wasn't fair. Wait, you don't value me? Let me prove to you why I deserve the rate I asked for. But then, in that moment, I caught the gap, and I made the choice to be above the line, as we say in conscious leadership. I asked myself how I could tend and befriend this client, not seeing them as the enemy, but as somebody who is coming to me and asking about a win-for-all solution. Rather than an enemy, my focus shifted to them being an ally. And with this shift in mindset, we were able to create a deal that honestly works great for both of us. In that moment, I made a choice from the gap. See, unconscious Keith, he would have disappeared or fought back. Instead, in that moment, I saw that I had a choice and I got curious. So, how do you get better at this? For me, the key is practice and analysis. At first, that gap's going to fly by so quickly that you'll miss it, especially you fast responders. If you are one of those speedy ones, take some time after that interaction to analyze your response. Was I open and curious, or closed and committed to my pattern? What would it look like if I made a different choice, or responded from a different mindset? Maybe you want to walk around the block the next time before hitting send on that pokey email. And for those of you like me, the extra pausers and think before speakingers, practice reducing that gap by testing things out when it feels safe. Find a friend or a colleague who you trust, and just be as blunt and reactive as possible in a conversation. My guess is that they either won't notice the difference or will appreciate your new sense of candor. Send that email without quintuple checking it this time. Or ask what they meant in that text, rather than sitting up all night in anxiety. If you're still struggling with either side of the gap, ask why. Why is it important for me to respond so quickly? Or conversely, what's at risk if I don't do it exactly right? You see, some of us were conditioned to respond from strength, and others appearing too forceful. Some of us, we're just afraid of being wrong, and that one is core for me. Thing is, once we understand why we respond in the ways we do, hopefully we can see that we have a choice and respond differently the next time. Stimulus responses are different for everybody, and they can be radically different in each moment. But becoming more aware of and fine-tuning your response gap can be honestly magical. Thanks for being here.